When a man sees his wife go to her own funeral to pay her respects, he follows her to find out why she did it. What he finds out is shocking. Ted, pull yourself together. You can't break down and start crying. Not while your son is watching. Ted tried to hold back his feelings and look busy. But as he watched the men put his beloved wife in the grave, he realized for the millionth time that day that he would never see her beautiful face or hear her sweet voice again. Ted let himself fall to the ground and cry like a child because he couldn't keep his feelings in check. It had been a week since the stupid car accident that took Mary's life. Ted's pain was still too fresh, and he kept hoping he'd wake up from the worst dream ever. But that day was real in every way. People gathered the dirt that was put on the casket, and Rick, Ted, and Mary's 15-year-old son cried over and over again until his eyes hurt. As the nice people from close-knit groups of friends and family got ready to leave, they all went up to the man and his son and tried to say something meaningful and kind before saying goodbye. "Rick, you look very worn out. Try to get some rest and have the driver take you home." Ted kissed his son and told him, "I'll see you at home soon." The man was still listening to the good ideas and advice of people who were leaving when he saw a strange person standing a long way away. It almost looked like a silhouette, and when Ted realized it was a woman in a black dress, he had an odd feeling that didn't make sense. Is that Mary? Ted knew that, most likely, he was seeing things. He had just heard someone say, "Grief makes your mind do strange things." Still, something inside him told Ted to look more closely. Ted pushed past the next friend in line and slowly made his way through the crowd, keeping his eyes on the mysterious man in black. Ted rubbed his eyes and waited for the woman far away to go away. But she didn't. As he got closer, he saw more and more that it wasn't a dream. And the more he looked, the more sure he was that it was his wife Mary's face in the crowd. Now Ted moved more quickly through the crowd, still looking at the woman. This time, though, the woman walked away quickly. Ted tried to run, but the woman was almost to her car when he did. She jumped into the black car, looked back once to see how far Ted had come, and then drove off into the distance. Ted also tried to chase the car, but it didn't work. The car had sped away in a cloud of dust, which made it hard for Ted to see the license plate numbers. Who were they? Could that have? No, that can't happen. Ted turned around and suddenly realized that he had made a bit of a scene and that people were looking at him with varying degrees of concern. "I need to sleep so badly." Just as Ted was about to leave, he saw a piece of paper floating in the air and slowly falling onto the road in front of him. It must have come off the car. Ted took it out. It was a receipt from an 80-mile from the city gas station. Less than 2 hours later, Ted was on a dusty, empty road. He looked at the name of the gas station on the piece of paper and then at the same name on a big signboard. He was there. Ted took a picture of Mary out of his wallet and showed it to one of the women who worked there. He asked, "Is there a chance you've seen this woman around here recently?" The photo didn't give the woman at the gas station much to think about. That is, in fact, Carla. About a week ago, she moved into the area. "What's going on?" The woman gave Ted a suspicious look and looked him over from head to toe. He told the woman, "Oh, I'm just an old friend who couldn't meet her before she moved. I thought I'd surprise her by showing up. Do you have any idea where she might be living now?" The woman said, "Of course I do. This is a small town." And then added, "She's staying at Audrey's motel at the end of this road." "Oh, I'm almost there. Thanks for helping, Mrs." The woman smiled for the first time in the conversation when she said, "Lily. Enjoy your day." Ted did as he was told and walked to the end of the road, where he saw the old-looking motel. He used his charm to get Ms. Audrey, the owner, to tell him the number of the room he was looking for. All that was left was for Ted to knock on the woman's door and for her to answer. The mystery would then be solved. Ted used his knuckles to knock on the door and wait. There was no answer, but for a few seconds, the dot of light on the other side of the peephole went out. Whoever was in the room just peeped at him from behind the door. Ted knocked again, but this time he did it louder and left more time between each knock. The door opened after a few seconds, and a woman ran right into Ted's arms. "I'm so sorry, honey," the woman sobbed. Ted knew right away when he touched her, heard her sweet voice, or smelled her perfume. "That's my Mary. Mary is still alive." Ted was happy and relieved at first, but it didn't take long for the truth to hit him hard. "Mary, why? Why did you pretend to be dead? Do you know how much you've hurt me? Forget about me. Do you know what you've done to your son? What was so bad in your life that?" Mary took her husband's hands and shook them until he stopped talking. "Please sit down. Please listen to me, sweetheart. I want to get this out of my system. For the rest of the afternoon, Ted listened as Mary told him about things that she had never planned to tell anyone else. Today, in front of family and friends, the woman you buried was my twin sister, Paris. Ted thought it was another lie, but the more he listened, the more he saw how complicated the truth was. Paris was my blood, but she caused some of the worst things to happen to me in my life. She was always a troubled kid, and it was easy for her to pick on me. Since I was a child, I've been the one to clean up her messes, deal with her anger, and still run back to her when she got into trouble. After a while, I stopped getting sucked into her world, and she went to prison for fraud after fraud. Some days, I wanted to find her, but then I remembered that I had a family and that I still needed to heal. But Paris got out of jail last month and came to my office. She came to ask for money in a way that wasn't fair. For the first time in my life, I told her to leave. But she threatened me with something that completely took away my control. Ted heard what she said and wanted to know what the threat was. But since Mary was already having trouble talking through her tears, Ted started to think about the question. It was the only thing she could use against me, and she knew I would keep doing what she asked. So I gave her the money she asked for, once, twice, but it was never enough. She kept coming back and making threats, and each time I gave in. Until one day, she was driving my car, and I was sitting next to her as we argued about something stupid that happened when they were kids. Paris lost her temper, and she also lost control of the car. I can still hear the metal breaking and see the flying glass shards that hit my face. I thought I was going to die for a second. I thought about Rick and you. But on that business trip, you were in Shanghai. But when my mind was clear again, I thought. Paris. I found her on the other side of the rubble, and by the time I could hold her hand, she had already stopped breathing, Mary said, and then she started crying again. The truth was that, in the heat of that fateful moment, Mary felt choked by the fear that she would be blamed, caught for the payments she had already made, and pulled back into Paris's mess. So, she made the choice to run away. Mary called 911, got herself together, and kept walking until I got to the bus station. So that's how I got here. So I pretended to be dead. Ted held his wife as she couldn't stop shaking and thought about the worst day of her life. Ted felt relieved, but he didn't know that his wife was about to tell him the most shocking truth of all. I need to tell you something, Ted. I have to tell you what Paris said she would do to me. Go on, sweetheart, I'll listen. Only Paris knew what was really going on with Rick. When you left home and didn't come back for 6 months, we had one of our biggest fights that year. At the same time, I got back in touch with an old boyfriend. This was something Paris knew, and she was the only one who figured out that Rick's real father was that other guy and not you. She also knew how much I cared about Rick and you. She knew that if she threatened to tell this truth, it would always work. I'm sorry, Ted, that I lied to you. All of this seems to be payback for what happened that one night. I apologize for everything. That afternoon wasn't the first time Mary tried to fix things with her boyfriend. Mary only told the truth when she turned herself into the police, when she went to court, and even when she talked to her son Rick. Ted could forgive Mary because he, too, had strayed outside of his marriage. He knew what it was like because he had done it. After a year of bringing the truth out into the open and living apart, Mary was done with all the court cases, and Ted had thought enough about the future of his marriage. Mary and Ted held hands for the first time in months when they met at Paris's gravestone on the first anniversary of her death. They had let go of their guilt and anger and were ready to give their love another try.